Hello, Alex. Do you want to know a secret? 'Cause I know one. And I will tell you how to do it faster than you can say poopty ploopty pants. Do you want to know what it was?
Yes.
I know how to count all the way to week 55 on Out on That Line podcast.
Woo!
Alex, how you doing this week?
I mean, I feel like a piece of shit right now because I had no idea that there was a bit, and I have no clue if that was a monologue, if I had lines in that. I had no idea. I've seen Sh 55 times, but I just felt like a rat in a rainstorm. I was just caught there. I didn't know what to do. I'm so sorry. I bobbled your bit.
I sprung that on you. You know, I wasn't expecting anything other than you to stand there and just take it. You know, that's all that was needed in that one.
Well, in that case, you're welcome.
Well, we have a big episode this week. We've got a couple of our favorite things to talk about this week, both in segment 1 and segment 2. The album this week is a highly anticipated album from Strand of Oaks called In Heaven, released recently. We gave it about a 2-week, maybe a week and a half little buffer before we did the review on the show. I think just to give it a proper listen, get the fandom out of the way, give it the unbiased listen, give plenty of time for that. So we're going to get into that later. But I have breaking news, Alex. Eric Clapton is an asshole after all.
What are you saying, Geoff? What has old slow hand himself done this time?
Well, he was the subject of a pretty scathing Rolling Stone article. And I say scathing, and I think I honestly am not giving it its proper due for how much this just absolutely rips Eric Clapton to shreds. This guy has been, still is, and always will be a gigantic piece of shit. And it is astounding that he is still somehow like a hero to millions of people.
I mean, I guess by that same metric, Donald Trump was elected the president of the United States. You know what I'm saying?
That's a good point.
Life or lack thereof, finds a way. And I mean, he's a cretin. He's a fucking racist, and he's anti-mask and anti-vax, but not just anti-vax and anti-mask. And I can't get to the article because I blew all my freebies on the 500 songs of all time. Mm-hmm. So I can't read specifics. So I'm hoping you've got them handy. He not only believes these things, but he's been funding artists that feel similarly.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he purchased a van, like a touring van, not like a tour bus, like a tour van, for this group that are also like wanting to go against any sort of vaccine or mask mandates. Because Eric Clapton made that whole big thing about the fact that he wasn't going to play venues that required vaccines or required masks. He's like, that's not freedom. I'm not going to do it. It's like, okay, man, whatever you say. Like, it's just such a and I hate myself for using this word. It's such a boomer mentality for people of that age on that side of the aisle. It's just as expected from him, but to go to the point where he's like funding these people that are also causing the problems. It's like just he's letting it spread, just this like insidious little disease that he's like, yeah, go ahead. He just turns the fans on to make sure that air is blowing out towards everybody. He's an asshole.
Well, what it does for me is it serves to remind you of like the depths of his conviction when it comes to these things. Mm-hmm. He's not just casually like, yeah, no vaccines, fight the power. He's actively funding like-minded people to prove a point, which is he believes this shit, ride or die. He takes this very seriously, and the rest of us can get triggered. The rest of us can get fucked. He's Eric Clapton. He's beyond reproach. He got away with some of the most racist shit I have ever heard in my life. If you look at the transcript of what was said at that concert that night, Jesus Christ, we've talked about it before. He blamed it on drugs and alcohol, and I'm on the record as saying, I've been pretty fucked up a bunch of times in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Never once did I turn into a racist.
Nope. I mean, whew, what an excuse to use, just like to blame something that you chose to do for your own actions. It's like, what part of that process do you think the blame lands anywhere outside of yourself when you are the one making every single choice along that path? And for him to just and the thing is, in the article, it shows like there's a couple pictures of him and everything. And I've now found out that I'm locked out of the article, but I read it a couple times. So we should, I won't get too deep into specifics in the fear of getting something wrong, but I think the discussion we can have is perfectly fine with the facts that I am pretty sure of. And he's talking about not wanting other races, other people to come into the UK, specifically England, because he doesn't want it to turn into like an immigrant society. He basically says, and I think he says, keep England white, basically. There's a politician that existed, I think, like a little bit before maybe Margaret Thatcher. He was trying to run, I think the last name was like Enoch or something like that, but he was trying to run for office, and part of his thing was very anti-immigrant, kind of policies. And Eric Clapton was a huge fan of this guy. So that in itself should have been a big time red flag, because this guy was basically like a Mike Pence or a Trump before those guys existed. And Eric Clapton was a big fan of him. So to me, it's like, he's always been this way. Why we continue to think that he's anything but this is crazy to me, because he's in these pictures wearing like moccasins and a piece of clothing from a culture that we as white people like invaded. And he's just wearing the shoes while saying all this stuff
without a drop of irony.
Yeah. Without even like a bit of self-reflection, not a single drop. I just don't think he's capable of it.
Well, and truth be told, I mean, you say like, why do we allow this canard that Eric Clapton is an elder who should be respected? Why do we allow that to endure? You and I don't. Most of the people that listen to this show probably don't. It is a select group of people who aren't pretending anything. They are either blinded by how important he was to their musical development when they were young, or they don't care that he's a douchebag, or they're glad that he stands for the things he stands for. And here's the thing. I would posit to you that if being on drugs and alcohol made him a racist, because they took over his brain and they made him say a bunch of no words. If that's the case, then if he was fucked up on drugs and alcohol writing his music, drugs wrote his music. He didn't actually write any of it. He's not actually good at the guitar. Drugs is.
That's fair.
Stands to reason, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's some big brain thinking right there, my friend.
That's the meanest shit I can think to say about him, is his whole goddamn life is a lie. He is drugs.
Yeah, I really, this guy, I mean, just fuck Eric Clapton. I don't know why, what it's going to take for him to just be gone, but whatever it is needs to happen.
Yeah, nothing that we've said here is taking a bold stance in terms of like, we don't care who we piss off. We're taking it to the Trumpers. Yeah. Like, that's not what the point of this is, but he's entitled to his opinion. And when he says these things, I'm entitled to my opinion, which is he's a shithead, and I'm going to rip him for it because he's never going to hear this. What the hell's he going to do? Oh, that's not very nice. I can't
might not even know what a podcast is.
Yeah. He probably
can't plug a Fender into it. He doesn't give a shit.
He probably thinks it's a new racial slur he's never heard of. Yo, you're a right podcast, mate. Fuck off. Fuck Eric Clapton.
Oh, man, I'd like to see who he tries to... That's got to be nerve-wracking for him to try to decide who that is a derogatory term about.
That's... Yeah. Oh, I can just see him. He's like, me head is... I'm just making him sound dumb as shit. Me head is swimming with the possibilities.
Do you think he just like tries on a bunch of hats and just like tries it out on a lot of people, see when he gets slapped?
I think, yeah, he goes out, he tries it
Okay.
until it sees who gets the most offended by it.
He's nothing if not industrious.
I mean, he seems very committed to this bit that, he's the savior of the unvaccinated. So I guess anything's possible.
And you know what the funny part is? He's vaccinated.
I did not know that.
Yes, sir.
Not know that.
Yep. He's had arthritis for like years, I guess, which being a guitar player, not great. So he's like been in pain for a while. And then he got the AstraZeneca, which was, I think, only available over in Europe. I think it was like very exclusive. It's like, you see somebody with a Louis Vuitton bag and you're like, damn, they got it like that. You hear someone's got that AstraZeneca. They don't even have that over here in the States. You have to import that. That's not cheap. Yeah, so like, but he said that it made him feel like shit and that it made his arthritis and everything way, way worse. But he's still playing. It's like, how much worse could it have made it?
Bro, I felt like I had crippling arthritis for a day. That's the after effect that sometimes people get from the shot. I got Moderna. I got fucking whomped both times. I was at work just white knuckling it, just sweating, pouring sweat, cold as shit, yet sweating, joints ached. If he says he got fucked up by it, I can understand that. But did it worsen your arthritis, or did it just make you more aware of it because of the joint pain symptoms the day of?
Yep.
And you just went, I had a cold one time in my life, and that gives me all of the latitude I need to be like, and Dimetap got me so fucked up that I called the prime minister a racial slur. Wasn't me, it was Dimetap.
He is a very A to B kind of thinker, though. So he goes from my arthritis hurts, it has to be this shot, like A to B, one to the other. Like, which we should have known was coming when he just saw his son fall out a window and was like, how can I sell some records about this?
This would make a great song. Oh, God. Woo!
We had to get something in there about the fact that he let his son fall out a window.
Oh, yeah. And I'll tell the story again to close out Clapton Hour if you want. Sure. But I told you before the podcast, we were joking about that. And you had made that joke a couple podcasts ago where it was like, what's the difference between Eric Clapton's son and a bag of cocaine? He wouldn't let the bag of cocaine fall out the window. And I was like, that's extremely funny and in poor taste. I'm going to tell my dad. So I went up to my dad and I was like, hey, Dad, and I blah, 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 I tell him the joke. And he looks at me and goes, you know what really happened, right? To which I said, well, Dad, I don't know what kind of fucking psychopath you'd have to be to make up a song about your kid falling out of a window and dying. But I guess if I had to pick a guy, it would probably be Eric Clapton. But yes, I know that this happened. Thanks, Dad. That's the joke.
Oh, man, I wonder if he thought he was like really imparting some knowledge.
I think he wanted to make sure I knew that wasn't a fake story, and that if I did and I stood by the joke, my soul is damned. I listen to that song and I cry because I think about what if that had happened to you. I'm like, yeah, aren't you glad this 32-year-old piece of shit never fell out of a window? Aren't we all glad?
And Bill, like, let's get real here, buddy. The song is Tears in Heaven. They're not happy tears that he's singing about. So no, it wouldn't apply to you.
Yeah, exactly. Precisely. Oh, fuck.
Oh, man, everybody's catching ricochet shots around here.
Pretty much. It's been a bloodbath these first 15 minutes.
Well, what do you think? What do you say about getting into this Strand of Oaks album?
What do you know? What do you say? Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Strand of Oaks in Heaven came out October 1st. So as if you are a regular listener of the podcast, you will know that Strand of Oaks is a pretty big deal around these parts. They Timothy Showalter specifically and his cohorts, whoever he decides to have with him at that moment and dub Strand of Oaks, they make some pretty great albums. They do some pretty great work. They're on quite a run of a few great albums. And so this one, In Heaven, was highly, highly anticipated here on the podcast. Maybe not to the level of a Casey Musgraves, but damn close, if not tied, maybe.
I mean, personally, I was anticipating it because there was no doubt in my mind that we weren't going to find a ton of things to talk about at the worst and love it immensely at the best. And I'll spoil it off the top. This album is fucking immaculate.
Oh, buddy, it sparkles.
It shines like a heavenly diamond, which is appropriate considering the subject matter. I mean, this album is, as Matt Reno would say, rock solid.
Yes. Oh, speak that truth, baby.
Yeah, I mean, they are Strand of Oaks. And by the way, I love that it's Timothy Showalter is the engine that drives Strand of Oaks. Mm-hmm. But I love that it's not Timothy Showalter and Strand of Oaks. It's just we are all Strand of Oaks. That's really fucking cool. So I'm going to say Strand of Oaks with the implicit knowledge that Timothy Showalter is the driving force behind it. The thing I love the most about Strand of Oaks and the thing I love most about this album is the way that he can take terrible experiences that he's had in his life, tragedy, sickness, sadness, alienation, and he can sublimate it into great art. And there's that age-old thing we constantly loop back to on the show. Does suffering beget great art? And you know what I mean? I tend to go with the David Lynch quote about Van Gogh that I always bring up as well. We're playing the hits. I think painting gave Van Gogh the only happiness he had. I don't think he was great at it because he was sad.
Yeah.
So I think Timothy Showalter, Strand of Oaks, has found a way to take tragedy and turn it into beautiful art, not because, we're tormented, but it's how you make sense of things. And it's a joy to, again, like Casey Musgraves, watch an artist work through their personal life in front of you.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I was very, very pleased with this effort for Mr. Showalter. And, his big thing, and I don't know if you follow him on social media or pay attention to him at all, but he's very big time, like, positivity as a lifestyle. You know what I mean? So it's very infectious because he just, like, he clearly is so authentic about it that he just wants to have a good time doing what he does and having everybody else around him have a great time as well. And he's not afraid to, he's not like Andrew WK or something where he just makes party music to make everybody jump around. It's not like that, but it's very much like music as a collective. Like he's always wanted us to feel like these songs are for us as well as they are for him. It's more about, he always uses the word sharing his music with people. It's like he made it, but he wants it to belong to everybody, and obviously he wants the paychecks for it. Fair enough for making it in the first place. But
I think he's earned them. Yeah.
Yeah. I really feel like he from album to album, he just like gets weirder and weirder and weirder. And that's what I love the most about it. Cause it's just, you have Heal as an album. And I mean, he had a few before that, but Heal was kind of like the big one that really started him off on the trajectory that he's on now. Heal was very like kind of pop, a lot of rock. Hard Love was a lot of rock and roll. Eraserland started to get weird. And then In Heaven, just like this guy smokes a lot of weed. He admits to that. He doesn't drink. So like really all he does is like the psychedelic brand of substances. So this album I think is a true representation of probably where his head was at the whole time he was making it.
Well, Geoff, it's sort of a cosmic gumbo. I'm going to drive that bit into the ground.
Oh, perfect.
But no, it is. It's the thing that I love about it is you're right. It got weird. It got galactic. I mean, the first song is called Galacticana. So it got weird. It got cosmic. And at the same time, no matter what Strand of Oaks does, they don't need to do too much to say a lot. They don't have to put a hat on a hat. There's a lot going on, but it's so cohesive and so clearly in line with that sound. And I think a lot of that has to do Timothy Showalter, I would say, has a very iconic voice.
Yes.
It's not way the fuck out there and nowhere, but it is distinctive. I always use Tom Waits as the bellwether of like a super unique voice. And Timothy Showalter's isn't like crazy outlandish like that, but it is so identifiably him, and it is perfect for this kind of music.
Yes. His voice is powerful.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like the decibels he can create from his voice are substantial. Having seen him a few times in like pretty small venues, like he doesn't need a lot of the PA volume. Like when you're close enough to the stage, you can hear him singing, which is crazy at a concert with a full band and a full sound system to be able to literally hear, not from the microphone, from the speakers, like directly out of his mouth. That's how powerful of a singer he is, you know, and maybe he doesn't have like the crazy technical capabilities and things like that, like you see on The Voice and places like that, but his voice just has a lot of power. It is, like you said, very distinctive, and you always know that it's a Strand of Oaks song. Like every time I hear him, it's got that kind of like little vibrato in there. It's almost like he's crying a little bit, you know. It's like very, very much a welcoming kind of warm tone to his voice. So it really is distinctive, and I think adds so much to this music. And I feel like this was the inevitable inflection point for Tim Showalter. Was he was great at playing and singing rock and roll, and then once he figured out that he could use synth and use some more like technology instead of just, you know, guitar tone, you know, I feel like that's when he decided, he's like, oh, I can get real weird with this. And then we get an album like Eraserland, and we see, and I feel like that's when he noticed the possibilities, and this is where he realized those possibilities, is with this album.
Yeah, and I realize we're coming off of a week where we fought vehemently against the comparison between Jack Antonoff and Bruce Springsteen. But I did also say in that episode that our brains crave categorization and comparison to understand things. So I won't bring that up again, but I just wanted to reinforce, like, I understand. We talked about, like, oh, Jack Antonoff shouldn't be Bruce Springsteen. I get that. But sometimes as a compliment, as an evocative instance for the listener, you got to use other people. So to that end, when you talk about the way that the voice sounds, I hear tones of Steve Earle in there. I hear that Steve Earle also has that liquid nacho cheese delivery. It's just warm and it flows. Same thing here. And then same thing with Sturgill Simpson, a very distinctive voice that might sound like a lot of stuff that we're used to, but in its own way is very, very distinct and unique. I heard a lot of Sturgill. I heard a lot of Sailor's Guide to Earth flavor sprinkled into this one. I heard Springsteen in this one, actually, if you must know. So it's I don't know if they're conscious influences or they're just something that's kind of baked into this kind of music. If we want to go with the idea that it's cosmic country, maybe it's the kind of thing where these people who are doing psychedelics and smoking weed and dialed into the same things are having the same realizations. It's an argument to be made that human beings are vessels and that the ideas are out there and we're lucky enough to give them shape. Whether or not that's a bunch of commie gobbledygook, or if you choose to believe it.
Here, I think my brain just melted out of my ears.
But I mean, that rambling nonsense is the sincerest compliment I can give, which is this album feels like it's dialed into something that maybe only he understood, and he's going to share it with us and make us understand, you know?
Yes. And I think it's the album cover. I don't know if you have it up.
Yeah.
But it's like the night sky with clear stars. You know, that's what this album feels like, is that you're just laying down looking up at a clear sky while you just get taken on this journey. and there's such a perfect mix of synths with guitars. It's just like he's taken everything he's done so far and just mashed it all together, and it just made such a beautiful experience all the way through. That when the first time I listened to it, when it ended and it looped back to the beginning and it started Galacticana again, I was like, oh, there's not more. It's perfect. And I think when an album leaves you like wanting more and excited for the next song, that's the mark of I think a really, really good effort.
Yeah, definitely. Should we get into talking about the songs?
Let's do it.
Talk all night.
Let's do it. So the first one, Easter, is one of the ones that we chose. We chose 6. We did not pick Galacticana. I don't know if you noticed that.
I did notice that. It's both the first song on the album and the lead single.
Yes.
And neither of us picked it. No disrespect, T.
No, but I think that's the thing with this album, is that even as good as the singles were, I think the meat of the album, those filler songs, or what's supposed to be filler songs, are the ones that really like. I feel like the singles are great little like stopping points, but the other songs, those filler songs, are the ones that is that journey, like the light speed journey from point to point, and it's just like such a cool experience of an album that we get like taken off into all these synth waves. And it starts out with Easter. It's just like, what a way to like come into this experience after Galacticana, which is kind of like a folk song. There's not a ton of variation to it, but then you get into Easter and it's like, oh, now I see what he's getting at with this album. It's just like they eased you right in. It's like, instead of taking a cannonball into the hot tub, you just dip your foot in first. You just get in there nice and slow. And I feel like Easter is that first step.
Dip a toe, absolutely. And it's like Galacticana's dreamy, but Easter is kind of really where those cosmic ethereal ripples start. What I really love about this song is that it's all verses, but every verse functions as a chorus as well. So sneaky, Strand of Oaks. You thought we wouldn't notice that you didn't have a chorus, that you just had verses. But we see what you did. Which I find fucking cool. And I guess if you're listening to it, you might organize it in your head as like, no, that's a pretty clear verse chorus. But I didn't get that sense. It all just kind of flowed in together, punctuated at first by this guitar that's like kind of fervent and crazy and would remind me of something off Eraserland. But the second time there's a guitar solo, it moves into a way more Texas sound. This song is about when he and his wife moved to Texas. And Easter, it's a renewal. It's a second chance for them. And I think this song is him kind of coming to terms with that. That's a scary move. That's a leap. That's a lot of upheaval. And I think this song functions as him embracing a bold leap as reinvention instead of seeing it as scary change.
Yes. And I don't know how many artists there are around these days that I think can put such just pure raw emotion into their lyrics and just make it so captivating. It's I don't know, maybe if you've had similar experiences, like obviously you and I have both moved to Texas at one point in our lives, so it's like, maybe it's because we can relate to it that it really hits home. But I think it really is, everybody can relate to that, because I think everybody, whether it's specifically moving to Texas, doesn't even have to be moving it at all. It's making some big change in your life. I feel like it's so, he's very specific, I think, about his experiences and what he's talking about, but he does it in a way that makes it very open to interpretation for everybody else, which I think is a really cool thing that he does.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I love lyrics that don't spoon feed it to you and aren't so esoteric that you can't make sense of what the story is and what's going on. You do have to think about it a little more. You have to engage with it more. You have to listen to it multiple times. So sneaky, Strand of Oaks. I see what you're doing.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, I've listened to this probably 4 or 5 times already. Looked at quite a few.
I don't blame you. Did you get it on vinyl? Yeah, you pre-ordered it, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I ordered it like 2 months ago.
I gotta get me a copy because this one's a keeper.
Oh, it's beautiful. And I think I have all of them. I just have to get the ones that he came out with before Heal. I think I have all of the vinyl that he's released.
Nice. Well, you listeners out there, donate to the Patreon so we can get Geoff the rest of them albums.
Yes, please. Yeah, they're all great in their own special way, but this one, I mean, I don't know, it's right up there with Hard Love for me, for my favorite Strand of Oaks.
Yeah, the first time you played me Shut In, I shit a chicken.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, this will be good. And then it just keeps going. You're like, oh my God. This is really good.
In that version of it, the like Out of Town Films version, it's just so good.
I like forgot how to breathe while I was watching it.
Yeah.
We got to the end and I was like,
it just is incredible.
It's
absolutely
great.
Incredible.
So
what do you say we move on to Hurry?
You read my fucking mind. You read my fucking mind. This is one where I have to bring in Tanner.
Okay.
Because we basically gave him an emotional blanket party last week. I figured the nicest thing we could do, because he texted me and he was like, I'm listening to the new Strand of Oaks tonight. And I was like, oh, let me know what you think. He fucking loved it. And I was like, whip up some thoughts. I'll read them on the show. So he has a couple of things here. A couple of them on songs we're not going to cover. But he did say about Hurry. He talks about how this world's not meant for me. The lyric harkens back to, I guess I just wasn't made for these times. Brian Wilson and Beach Boys. Mm-hmm. He also says, I could go on about this album forever. But it's true. It's reminiscent of that because Brian Wilson was horribly depressed. So you could 100% see I just wasn't made for these times as solipsism. And he's like, oh, I'm in my room. I feel like shit. I'm crying, blah, blah, blah. You could see it that way. Or you could see it as somebody wrestling with the concept that maybe they don't belong. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that means you're growing. You got too big for your shell. And I think that's what was meant by that sentiment in Hurry. So I think Tanner is exactly correct. It's just divesting yourself of vice and all the coping mechanisms that keep you locked in these unhelpful patterns of behavior and aren't going to help you move forward.
Yeah, and it's just a beautiful song.
Oh, yeah.
Like you take away on this one, because there's two on here that you picked, was Hurry and Carbon. Were going to be two of my picks. And then you got a whole day early. You sent me your picks, you sneaky son of a bitch.
I knew right away. I was like, these are the ones. These are the ones.
And Hurry is definitely, I mean, if you even want to try to this is a real Sophie's Choice thing I'm asking people to do, but if you're even going to make a top 3 songs on this album, I think Hurry's got to be in there. I mean, it's just that good.
Oh, it's great. And again, the lines city in my dreams, that is in that single image, it just tells you it's the pursuit of the identity that you want. So this idea that the other line, this world was not meant for me. Again, that's not a sad thing. It's I cannot dwell in, I think specific to Tim Showalter, I can't dwell in my drinking habits anymore. I don't know if I don't want to get my wires crossed here. So I don't think he was an alcoholic, right? He just realized that booze was not as helpful.
I don't know if it was, I suppose if alcohol causes a problem in your life, it shouldn't be quantified by how much you drank. It should be how much of a problem does it cause.
Sure. That's
I suppose in that sense, yes, he was an alcoholic because he didn't like who he was when he was drunk. But I think in comparison to other folks, he probably it didn't seem like it was as destructive as it is for some other people. I could be wrong about that, but I think it was very much he didn't like who he was when he was drinking, and maybe he started to drink more, and he just kind of, I think, knew enough to get ahead of that because he's a very intelligent guy. And I think he's very self-aware, so that helps in that situation. I think he just was like, well, I don't need it, so he just stopped.
And I think, so in the context of this song, he definitely doesn't speak about it it's I gave up gluten.
Yeah.
It has more gravity to it than that. So again, I don't know how he would categorize it. Mine is not to know. I just know that the message of, hey, have you noticed how the walls are kind of closing in? It's not because they're coming to crush you. You got too big for them. You got to go, man. It's Goodwill Hunting syndrome. You got to get out there and change something. The life that you want is out there. You have to go for it. And that means you got to shed some shit on the way.
Yeah, you got to go see about a girl.
There you go.
Had to do it.
There you go.
All right. Well, what do you say we move on to Horses at Night? Another one of my picks. I love the lyrics in this one. Just really, I mean, from verse 1 all the way through, I love it. I mean, it's just, we're just movement in the dark, lonely fragments made of stars, mild interruptions in an endless fog, cosmic dust pumping blood. I mean, just like, way to make me feel tiny. I mean, it's just very much a like, the universe is massive. Like, we are nothing.
It's evocative of the cover of the album, where it's just him standing with a look of amazement on his face, staring into the sky. So again, yeah, you feel really small, and that's really threatening at first. But then it's like, same sensation when you stare out into the ocean, the enormity of it. You will never be that big, and you can do nothing about how big it is and how powerful it is. So if it's going to surround you, you just got to take in the beauty, because you can't try to measure dicks with the universe, which made my whole beautiful thing into a pile of shit. 'Cause I'm an idiot. But you get what I'm saying.
That, my friend, is a motivational quote if I've ever heard one.
You can't measure dicks with the universe.
You should put that in cursive and like make it an Instagram quote thing and try to get like all those meme pages to share it.
There we go. Oh yeah, I could be the Rupi Kaur of disgusting male poetry.
Oh God. Oh, what a fraud.
Yeah, truly.
What an absolute fraud. We could do a special edition, like, investigative podcast about Rupi Kaur being a fraud.
How about Goopy Kaur? Because it's basically like Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop. Same thing.
It's just as useful. I think maybe less dangerous, but just as useful.
Probably. Rupi Kaur is not asking you to put silly putty with mercury up your snooch, so
Yeah,
that's good.
True.
That's good.
True. That's true. Well, what do you say we get back to somebody that I'm proud to be a fellow American with, Mr. Tim Showalter.
I did want to add another thought to Horses at Night.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you were about to move or not, and I wanted to catch you before you were. Okay, great. One of the things this song made me think of, friend of the pod, Tanner, and I were having a conversation after a service for our friend Danny, who passed away. And Tanner and I were talking about, like, well, what kind of music did Danny like? Because, like, I knew Danny. We were friends. I was nowhere near as close to him as Tanner was. Mm-hmm. And so I was just like, hey, man, what kind of music are you listening to? What did you and Danny used to listen to? And he was like, oh, CCR. That was the one. CCR. And Long as I Can See the Light. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I can't listen to it. It's going to destroy me. And this is probably corny, but I remember thinking and telling him in that moment, you got to go listen to that song because Danny lives on in that song. And this is a song that reminds me of that. This is a song that is talking about all the people that have been lost, that Tim Showalter lost, that maybe anyone in his band could have lost. It is about the people that we've lost that have become part of this huge universe that we stare up at, and it surrounds you. It's a little The Lion King, the way that I'm putting it, the circle of life, but but it's true, and not even in like a strange metaphysical way, because every time Tanner listens to As Long as I Can See the Light, he will think of Danny, and Danny is alive and well in that moment. And that is one of the coolest fucking things that music can do. It's why when people are like, I don't really like music, I'm like, what? You a psychopath?
They are.
It clearly, I mean, you weren't hugged as a child. Like, it's just one of those beautiful things music can do, and this song just reminded me of that sentiment. No one's ever really gone.
Yep. And that's such a beautiful thing to be able to hear. I mean, I listened to this song in the car. I listened to it just like laying on the couch with headphones on.
Mhm.
I listened to it while mowing the lawn. I listened to it basically like anywhere that I was like, okay, I'm going to be doing this for a certain amount of time. I'm just going to listen to the album while I do this. And this was the song, like lyrically, that floored me. And specifically the last, like the outro is what it's called here on Genius. September 6th, 1970 was Jimmy's last show in Germany. 50 years of refracting light. Lonely aliens might hear him in the night. They'd get stoned and he'd blow their minds. Just that's so cool, man.
It's legitimately beautiful. I get
Yeah.
it. It's a line about Jimi Hendrix and space aliens and fucking dope and everything, but at the same time, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful sentiment. And like we said, people live on.
Yes. It's so good. It's just so good. The next one, speaking of people living on, Somewhere in Chicago. And this was one that he wrote as a tribute to John Prine. And I didn't know. I mean, I think I had seen Tim Showalter tweet when John Prine passed away, tweeted his condolences and everything. But I didn't realize that he was a big time important artist to Strand of Oaks and the whole legacy there. And it just like this song is just such a nice little pop song. It's got such a nice message. It feels like being, as someone that was a fan of John Prine, it feels like, again, he lives on. As long as he gets talked about, you can still hold on to those memories and they'll all come back every time you think of them.
And the other thing I would commend Strand of Oaks for is this idea of like Chicago as a living, breathing character in the song. Mm-hmm. Not to be the guy, like, it's if I were to do the same thing as like, I lived in New York City, but I did go to school in the Midwest for a year, and there is something that is so distinctive about the vibes in the Midwest. Like, you can call them the flyover states or Trump country or whatever the fuck, but irrespective of all of that, there is a feel to the people and a feel to the land that when I listened to this song, I was like, holy shit, I'm back in Bloomington. This is wild. Mm-hmm. So I get it, specific to Chicago, but that Midwestern flavor that was captured, that John Prine was able to capture with everything he did,
mm-hmm.
but then that's distilled here. It's just like a really beautiful tribute to his idol. It's in the same vein as Letter to You when Bruce Springsteen was singing about all his old bandmates. Like, mm-hmm. It's the same kind of like, you did it. You set out to do a tribute and you nailed it. Adam Sandler's Chris Farley tribute. Same thing.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it was a very emotional experience listening to this album because I feel like he does such a good job at allowing you to feel the same things he was feeling when he was making the music. I think he just allows himself to be a conduit for emotion, and whatever serves those emotions is what the song is going to be. Musically, lyrically, whatever it is, that's how it's going to be, and that's how it's going to go. And I feel like he's very militant in his approach to music, but it's that he's so focused on making sure that it goes where it needs to. Like, he's militant about there being no rules about what makes a song. Anything could make a song, and he's going to find it.
Yeah, and you can see when he's just trying to cut loose on the album,
Mm-hmm.
The last song we're going to talk about, my pick, I mean, I have a fucking entire page of notes on it because we won't get too far ahead of ourselves. He just drops a fucking bomb. It is tremendous. His idea of like how the album should flow, where all the stops should be, and it sort of moves to the beat of jazz. It's a cosmic gumbo. I'm gonna get that reference in at least 3 times if my name isn't Frank Zappa.
Oh shit, he did.
Dave, the twofer. Here's your Zappa watch, folks. Place your bets next time. Anyway, that's my story.
Well, the next one that you're talking about is Carbon, I assume.
The one I was referring to that it's like he's cutting loose and having fun was Sister Saturn, but Carbon, okay. I had an adjacent but opposite reaction to. So I realize this is my pick, but I've been doing a lot of talking. So I'm not going to stomp all over this one. Would you like to start?
For Carbon?
Yeah.
Because I would. This is one of the ones that I would have picked.
Do it.
So this one just fucking rocked. Like, that's the be all end all on this song, is that it just fucking rocked. I mean, the chorus, I am just carbon, fueled by conscience, afraid to get killed. I might have been a mountain laughing at the lion alone on the hill. I mean, there was some drugs involved in this. There was a lot of distortion on his guitar involved in this, and I loved every goddamn second of it. Oh my God, there was just so much going on with this song. So you got the fiddle that they added, which has this like very sorrowful analog feeling, which is appropriate for the themes of grappling with mortality. We are all just carbon. And how do you grapple with mortality in a dangerous and increasingly cynical world? And the burden of consciousness and the fact that we have emotions that we have to navigate and that can be very overwhelming. But at the same time, this isn't like a dark, depressing song. It's not sinister, but it's got that kind of like cherry wine tint to it, where the closest thing I could think of was Government Mule, Time to Confess. You know that song? Yes.
Yeah. Just the way that there's like that modulation that's kind of sexy. Like, oh, the lady's coming in the room. What has she got? Oh, bottle of champagne. Oh, this is the night. Which obviously Carbon is not about boom boom, but you know me, I had to bring it up. But it's got that kind of sense of foreboding without making you scared so much as like making you aware of the gravity of the themes without bumming you out.
Yes. This song, the way that the bridge, when he says baby, I said baby, in that like it's almost like a 50s or 60s doo-wop kind of feeling to it. Oh, it just is exactly like you said. It has that almost like sinister little kind of turn to it. Just such an interesting song. It's just like everything that I wanted out of each part of this album. Like, it seemed like every song was just delivering exactly what it needed to at that point in the album. Maybe I was just like so locked in and in the right mind state for it for the first time I listened to it, that it just like did exactly what it was supposed to. So every subsequent listen has been good. But I just don't know. When you sit down and listen to this whole album, like, I don't know how you don't like this. I don't know how you don't have a great experience listening to this whole album.
And we talk a lot about objectivity and subjectivity on the show, but I mean, there is such a thing as objective, recognizable talent. Whether it's for you or not, Game recognizes, well, that would imply that we're talented music makers, but you can tell great art when it comes along. You can tell talent when it comes along. The great art part and the attraction to you is subjective, but objectively, you can't say these people don't have talent. We gave Jack Antonoff that much. Jack Antonoff is a talented person who needs to find his signature sound and do his own thing, and be the first Jack Antonoff, not the next boss. That's impossible to scale that summit. And I don't know. It's hard for me to be objective. I think it's an objectively tremendous album, but maybe someone would listen and be like, I didn't think it was that good. Guy's talented, but it's not that good. I might have to slap that person in the nuts, but
yes,
no disrespect. Yeah,
they would deserve it, you know. And what I'm honestly surprised about is, have you looked at the number of plays on Spotify for this album?
No.
So it's honestly like Galacticana has 853,000 plays, which is pretty substantial. But from there, the next one is Somewhere in Chicago, 179,000 plays.
That's the second single too.
Yeah. So it's weird to me. Maybe it's just most people are buying the vinyl, or buying a CD, whatever. Maybe they just don't use Spotify. Who knows? But I feel like this album is going to be one of those ones. Maybe it's going to take a bit to build up steam. But for me, this was like his career defining album. And he's kind of like, I don't know if he's quite at the level of like your favorite musician's favorite musician kind of thing, but he's got very famous musicians that are big fans of his. Like Jason Isbell is a massive Strand of Oaks fan. When Tim Showalter played, I forget, was it Radio Kids or something? I forget what song he played on a late night show, but Jason Isbell went and played guitar in his backing band for him. You know, and then Eraserland, he had just about all of My Morning Jacket that basically forced him to make an album, because they were like, no, you need to keep making music. And My Morning Jacket's like one of the most popular indie bands of the last like 15, 20 years. You know, they're up there with like the Flaming Lips and all those other bands. Are like, they play the big festival shows and they're big fans of Tim Showalter. You know, it's just, I don't know what it's going to take for him to make the big breakthrough into the mainstream. And I don't know if he even wants that, but I feel like I can't think of another way to get him the recognition that I feel like he deserves for the quality of music that he's made consistently for years now.
So you said maybe he's not your favorite musician's favorite musician, and that's fair. I would say he's the best kept secret in music. Let's say that.
Fair.
If he's not your favorite musician's favorite musician, he's the best kept secret in music.
I like
and that would account for the Spotify listens and all of that stuff, because I think the thing is, he is so objectively undeniable that anyone that hears it adheres to it. It's like the Borg.
Yes.
You will be assimilated into Strand of Oaks. How do you get more people listening to it? That's a great question. I'm sure it's one that he's trying to figure out with marketing and stuff like that. But I have no doubt that when people hear it, they're going to flock to it.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe, I don't know if our little corner of the internet here is going to help promote and get people to listen. Maybe just some of our listeners, but maybe then they tell a couple of friends and they tell a couple of friends. You know, we get a little ripple effect. Who knows? But I feel like it would be fitting if this album got popular that way, by a ripple effect, because it seems to be that's kind of what made the album in the first place. But it was really good. Do you want to? I think we need to touch on Sister Saturn. I think we need to talk about it, because I think when you're talking about letting it rip, this man lets it rip.
Oh, touch on it. We're going to fucking drop a whole ass bomb on it.
Well, let's hear it.
Which is a positive thing. Okay. I read a direct quote from the man himself, which was talking about, after the fact, after I listened to it, I went to see kind of like what the liner notes were like. And Tim Showalter says, you know, after, you know, grappling with all the other themes and songs on this album, sometimes you need one that comes along and is just pure fucking fun. You have fun making it, and it's fun to listen to. And for me, it is a purging of all the emotion that came before. Not negating it, but purging that emotional burden and just giving you a bucket of synth that reminded me so much. That's why I keep saying we're going to drop a bomb, because it reminded me of Gap Band. You dropped a bomb on me. It had that same, the same way that the synth functions in that song is very here. It's very moody, but it's simple. It's very honest. It's got like a little bit of Jim Morrison in the vocal delivery on the verses. Just that same kind of like brooding sense of doom in the delivery, but not in an apocalyptic, we're all fucked kind of way. It's just like, hey, there is a sense of foreboding. Maybe this is the end. Let's take our shirts off and wave them around our head like a helicopter. You're welcome, Petey Pablo and all of North Carolina. And let's just party until this fucking cosmic ball of dust burns, bitch. This song is a shedding of that neuroses. And it's just so fucking fun and so fucking good.
Yeah. And this is the one where it's just like, dang, he is in the pocket.
Oh, yeah.
And this is where Strand of Oaks, I don't know if this is where they're always going to live, but this is where they live right now. And it's a nice little home they've built for themselves on this In Heaven album, because this song absolutely fucks. This is another one that's got to be up there in the top 3, because this is right up there with like with Goshen 97. You know, there's a few songs, Radio Kids, like there's a few songs that are just those like, yeah, like get up and sing along with it kind of songs. Like this is right up there with that. It's just so much fun. So much fun.
Fuck yeah. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that friend of the pod Tanner in one of his notes said that this song channels big Landing on Water by Neil Young vibes.
Mm-hmm.
And I am not familiar with the song Landing on Water. So can't editorialize on that one. Probably should have listened to it before the show so I could weigh in. Oh, well. Tanner loves the song. And I just want to point, like, again, we talk about lyrics that say it all while not really spelling it out for you, but not going so far out that you're like, huh? This beautiful line. A shotgun wedding in a dry state. When I hear something like that, it invokes a very specific sense of desperation. It's absolutely perfect. Break it down. A shotgun wedding in a dry state. What's the poor groom to do? What are the poor tense guests who are all here and they all know what the score is? What are they to do? I've been to a shotgun wedding. Can't imagine what that would have been like if I wasn't fucking hammered. So it invokes a very specific dread, and yet it's jaunty and playful. I can't get enough of this fucking song.
I wonder if that's a real experience he had, because whoever's wedding it was, how many of those do you think that he's been to? You know, like they're going to know who he's talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hopefully that was just drawing upon a for instance. And not.
I hope so. Maybe it's just something he heard about. I don't know. But that'd be funny if he was just like, he's very ambiguous with everything else, you know, as far as like what it could mean. But that's like, there's no ambiguity there.
Yeah. It's
whoever's wedding that was, you suck.
Why would you do that? What dry states are there?
I don't know if there are dry states.
Is
I know
Utah a dry state?
No, I don't think so. I think they have like a limit to the alcohol content. Like I think in Oklahoma, or I don't know if it's all of Oklahoma, but I think at least parts of it, the limit is like 3.5% alcohol in your beer. And I think the liquor even has a limit as well.
Well, and I can see like, again, to reference Indiana University, it was in a dry county. So Sundays, you ain't getting shit. And after a certain hour, you ain't getting shit.
Yeah.
They had like very specific hours during which you could purchase alcohol there. Whereas here in good old Bar, Vermont, you can pretty much walk wherever. Hell, you can go down to the side of the creek and just pull a bottle out of there. Don't get a human hand or a boot while you're at it. Like, you know, the different strokes.
I do miss how cheap liquor is in Vermont compared to Texas.
Right. And I don't take advantage of it because I don't drink.
Yeah. I mean, I probably wouldn't take much advantage of it either, but when I did, it would cost me less money. That's sure.
Very true. That's very true.
Sure. Well, I think we're kind of coming right up against it time-wise here.
Yeah.
So do you have any last thoughts about Sister Saturn before we kind of get to wrapping up the album?
I do not. I will use my final thoughts to read Tanner's email in whole. It is short.
Okay.
But I just want to do them right because, like, I didn't find a good time to do it in its entirety, and I started taking jump shots out of context. So, to do it justice, this album is so very atmospheric. When you listen with headphones on, it can almost take you out into outer space. Jimmy and Stan is not only a very catchy song, but it's an extremely beautiful sentiment. Back in life, I wonder why we hang around so long. For me, it's all the songs I haven't found. Maybe the most poignant lyric I have heard in years. It related to me in such a deep way. Profound. This album almost places you in heaven, appropriately enough. The layering of the guitars and organs, keys, and synths, mixed with the reverb and effects echo, must be an incredible experience live. Now that's to editorialize. Mm-hmm. Something I'd very much like to see.
Yes. He canceled his tour.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Oh,
yep.
That's depressing.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, that news came out last week, I think. So,
yikes.
We'll see.
Well, to bring it back to more positive thoughts, Tanner finishes with, I could go on about this album forever. Horses at Night harkens the sound of fleet foxes. This is such a refreshing sound. This album has high replayability. And Tanner says, Album of the Year. Stamp it. That is Tanner's mortal lock.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to disagree with him. I'm really not.
I'm not going to disagree with him on any grounds other than if you want to talk about Album of the Year in the way that like Rolling Stone would look at it, this album unfortunately doesn't have the same stroke and reach as some of the other albums we've covered.
True.
But it is 10 times better than many of the things we've done on the show this year.
Yes.
I mean, it's 100%. If we're giving it on pure artistic merit, this is Album of the Year. If we factor in everything, I think this wins the developmental territory, so to speak.
Yeah, and
Sweeps the minors.
I think when we do our kind of end of the year wrap up, and this year it's going to be interesting when we do that, and I think we can start kind of trying to formulate some ideas because that's only like 2 months away, my friend.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to think about. But we can have like what we think is the album of the year and do like our Grammys category, or like Grammy style, like what is the album of the year, and then also have like our personal favorite album of the year.
Yes.
And that way we don't have to decide on, extraneous factors. Like if we want to give an album some shine, we don't have to rely on it also having had worldwide smashing success. I think it would be a fair way to do it.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's a good idea. And we absolutely should start talking about what we want to do because that is creeping up. And that was one of my favorite episodes to do, was the best and worst of 2020.
Yeah, that was a fun one.
So I very much look forward to the best and worst of 2021. And if you guys have suggestions or you have categories or topics or anything, you can reach out to us on Instagram at Out on That Line, Twitter at Out on That Line 1. We are still on Evil Facebook as well. Search Out on That Line. You can search hashtag Out on That Line on YouTube to find every episode, as well as our tremendous singles videos. Geoff, you got a singles video coming out this week by the time this episode rolls, ain't you?
Oh, yes, buddy. It'll be there. And it'll be there for you to see, along with all of our singles videos, all of our podcast episodes, all those special edition episodes we just did. They Rolling Stone just did their redo of the 500 greatest songs of all time. So we did our podcast about it. You can check that out. And also, if you have albums that you want to nominate, songs you want to nominate, artists you want to nominate for end of the year awards, people you think should get a little shine, I think we're close enough now that if you have those submissions, start sending them in. Anything that came out this year, 2021, from the stroke of midnight, January 1st, all the way up to now, all the way up to whenever you send them. I think we'll plan on having that episode out, I don't know, last episode of December, whatever that works out to be. Does that sound
I think so.
Fair enough?
Yeah.
So you have till basically a couple weeks before that. Let's say by December 1st, let's have all your submissions in. Everything that you want seriously considered. Try to get it to us by December 1st.
All right. Mark it down, dude. Mark it
down. Well, do you want to take us out this week?
Sure. Geoff, do you have any final words, or are we ready to rock?
We're ready to rock.
Okay. Well, until next time.